Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Dr. Laurie Mintz, author of Becoming Cliterate, Why Orgasm Equity Matters and How to Get It. Dr. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Absolutely.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say I can only speak to writing nonfiction books published by mainstream publishing houses because this is what I've done with both of my books. And the piece of advice that I want to give is one that really surprised me when I began the journey of writing my first book. And that is, don't write the book until you get a book contract. Instead, what you need to do if you want to write a nonfiction book is to familiarize yourself with the format for a nonfiction book proposal and write that. You can find formats online at some literary agents' websites. There's also some great books on the topic, but a proposal generally includes sections of an overview, the target audience, about the author, competitive titles, marketing and promotion, an annotated table of contents, and sample chapters. What you need to do is write a really, really good book proposal and then send out queries, one-page emails to a bunch of prospective agents, and then you wait for them to ask for your proposal. But a lot of authors I've talked to and given advice to will call me and they'll say, I've written this book. It's, oh, no. And from nonfiction, they don't want to see the book. They want to see a book proposal, and you may be wasting your time writing the actual book because when a publishing house buys the proposal, they may make some changes to the table of contents, the format, etc.
Excellent. And what are some of the most important things that people need to have when they are creating a nonfiction book proposal? What are the three most important things that they need to have in that proposal before they even consider sending it off?
Well, first of all, there's not just three, there's so many.
Yeah.
But one is to make sure it's in the format that a book proposal should be, and have done your research on the target audience. You can't sell a book proposal if you don't have an audience that you can say needs this book, wants this book. So that's real important. Also, having done your research on competitive titles, so you can say in that section how your book stands out is different from what's already there. And besides the table of contents in the chapter, the other thing is to actually have a really solid section on your marketing plan. Because in today's market, book publishers, publishing houses are really only going to purchase book proposals from someone who can say, I know how to market my own book, and this is my plan, and this is how I can be successful.
Perfect. And what do you feel is the hardest part these days about getting published?
Okay, and again, I'm speaking to publishing nonfiction books with major publishing houses, and honestly, the hardest part is finding an agent to represent you. Most nonfiction books won't be looked at by major publishing houses without an agent, and agents are really busy. And, my first book, I must have sent out 100 queries to agents, and I'd say maybe 5 replied, and the other 95 didn't even, say, hey, I got your email. They just don't reply. And so landing yourself an agent, just tirelessly, writing those queries, throwing them out, asking someone, if you know someone who's published a book, can you introduce me to your agent? That's the hardest part because it's the part that's sort of out of your control. You can write a great book proposal, do all your research, but getting an agent interested. But once you do, that agent is the one who is responsible for shopping your book around. And in fact, he or she might, before they do that, ask you to make edits to your proposal itself, which is why another reason I say, don't write the book, write the proposal.
And in regards to finding the agent, so how were you able to find yours? Because you mentioned you sent it out to 100 people and you had 5 responses. Because I know it's definitely a difficult process to do.
It is. So there's some online search engines you can just put in there, find agents. I don't remember the exact name. I'll have to look it up. But if you look, find a literary agent, you'll find an online directory of agents, and you can look through for who's taking proposals, etc. The other thing to do is to look at similar books and look in their acknowledgement section. Authors will generally always thank their agent, and then look that agent up and send a query to them. So it takes a lot of digging and a lot of research, but mostly online, and also the acknowledgments in books is a great way to go. And if you have a friend who published a book, even if it's totally like not similar to your book, ask them if they would introduce you. My agent for my second book, which is a book on sexuality, was a French cookbook agent, basically. But I got an introduction to her, and she was like, I think this sounds real interesting. I'm going to venture out. Now she's getting tons of proposals around sexuality. So put yourself out there and write those queries to as many agents as possible.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to talk a little bit now about marketing, because you mentioned about the marketing proposal earlier. So what I'd like for you to do is to please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well.
Okay, I definitely will, but I want to share a marketing strategy, if you don't mind, that needs to happen before you actually launch the book, that has to happen before you write the proposal. Unfortunately, in today's market, really, you already, if you want to land a nonfiction book at a major publishing house or even a minor publishing house, you already have to have a following of some sort. And so I know an author approached me a few years ago and said, how do I start? And I said, I'm really sorry to tell you that unless you have a following, you're not going to get a proposal sold. I said, get yourself, because she told me what her book was about. I said, get yourself on Instagram and get a following. Well, she did, tirelessly posted for several years and ended up with thousands of followers, and recently sold her book proposal. So get yourself on social media and start posting things around the content, or start a blog that gets following, because then in your nonfiction proposal, you can talk about how you have a presence with media. If you happen to be, and I know many of your guests have been academics or researchers or something like that, get yourself in the news, use any research you've done or anything to work with the media, get some context. So that's before you even write the proposal. But honestly, that continued for me. The most effective marketing strategy for me has been building a strong online social media presence in the platform used by the age group of those who read my book. A lot of those who read my book are 18 to 35-year-old women. Well, I did some research. I found out they're on Instagram. I wasn't even on Instagram. So I created myself an Instagram profile. I actually hired someone in that age group to help me make it relevant, and have amassed over 10,000 followers. And when I can track visits to my website and where they mostly come from, they are mostly directly clicking from my social media platform. So that's what I would say, is get on social media.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, I have a lot of favorite books, but my all-time favorite book, which I've read over and over many times on the writing process, is Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird. It has great advice, which includes just this simple nugget, as per the title, of taking the process of writing one step at a time, one sentence at a time.
Excellent. And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote has actually nothing to do with writing, but it is by Dr. Peter Slavin when talking about inequities in our healthcare system, but it applies broadly to many topics, including what I write about, which is sexual equality, and that is there can be no quality without equality.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Laurie, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Absolutely. My website, which is www.drlauriemintz.com, and that's spelled DRLAURIEMINTZ. And on that website, you can find links to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, as well as my YouTube channel. And if you don't want to go to the website and you just want to go directly to those social media platforms, across all platforms, my name is Dr. Laurie Mintz.
Well, Dr. Laurie, thank you once again for being on the show and wish you all the best in your author journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.